Okay, tonight we have a very famous graphic designer, Stefan Sagmeister. I've got to underline famous because he's on many of the top best design lists with the names in the same breath as Salavetz, Tibor Kelman, David Carson, etc., etc. Co-host Spencer Drate, myself, and Judith Salavetz are award-winning designers, Grammy and National Design nominated, authored 21 pop culture books, and their designs, music designs, are in MoMA, AIGA, Lou Reed, NYPL, and Rock Hall archival collections. They're also Grammy and Making Vinyl packaging judges, and I was honored to judge with Stefan at the 2018 Making Vinyl packaging event. Now, the famous Stefan Sagmeister, winner of National Design Award, AIGA Medal, and 7 times Grammy nominated and 2 times Grammy winner in album packaging. We're going to be focusing in on his music packaging in this interview. He's designed for rock and roll inductees Lou Reed, Jay-Z, Talking Heads, the Rolling Stones, and Aerosmith, and other famous musicians. Stefan was influenced by the famous designer Tibor Kelman, who is called social prod and bad boy graphic designer, which Stefan is in the same light. Stefan is a design legend. We saw his out-of-the-box design vision and profile and mentioned him in 2 of our very great books, Swag Rock Posters of the 90s and Cool Type 2. His Lou Reed Set the Twilight Reeling legendary poster was displayed in our curated 2003 CBGB Rock Posters of the 90s show. Stefan, thanks for being on today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
And I will start right in. So I've got a list of the packaging in order. And I think this is the first one you designed, HP Zinker Mountain of Madness in 1996, which I call optical illusion. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So basically in 93, I opened the studio, and on the opening card, it already said design for the music industry, because that's really what I wanted to do. And I did go and see all the record companies, and they liked the work, and said, oh, we're gonna give you tons of jobs, but they really didn't. So ultimately, the first job that we did in the studio was for a band where the singer was Austrian. It was a New York underground band. They played CBGBs on Saturdays, but the singer was Austrian, and we were friendly, and so we designed his cover. It had a tiny little budget, and the cover really, you mentioned it, is involved with an optical illusion. Basically, I had seen a young girl, maybe a 10-year-old girl, in the subway with a math book, and she had all the answers in the math book were overprinted with red X's, and she had a red filter, a red piece of acetate that she could lay over, and then the green answers would appear in black. And I thought, fantastic trick. I wonder if this also works with photography. And I tried it out, and it did work with photography, which was the reason why we could make that work. Meaning, like, we had a very calm looking guy, old man, on the front cover. And when you took the little booklet out of the red tinted jewel case, the old man went wild. So that, and then there were many other images on this, 16-page booklet that did basically the same thing.
And that was nominated for a Grammy also.
You could maybe say that this was possibly the most important cover we ever did, because that was Grammy nominated, and that Grammy nomination really changed the way the record company saw our studio, because they felt, okay, it doesn't just have it in the portfolio, they can also do it in real life, and the jobs came coming in after that.
Wow. The next one would be Marshall Crenshaw, Miracle of Science, 1996, and that was nominated for a Grammy also.
Yeah, that was done for an independent label. We liked Marshall's music, and it was, I think, an easy thing to do. We shrunk the booklet down to be extremely small, so you could still see the CD inside the plastic jewel case, and the CD we could cover it with this holographic foil, so it glimmered and glittered in all sorts of ways, and then we picked that up on the back and on the little paper booklet. I think it came out well.
The third one is David Byrne Feelings in 1997. That's a very nice package. I love that package.
Yeah, that I think the David Byrne package was the only packaging ever where the client, in this case David Byrne, really had the main idea. He already came to us and basically saying, I think I would like to be on it, done as a doll. And at that point, we had already worked with David, and I knew that he was very sophisticated visually, he had excellent taste. So normally we always said no if the client already had an idea, because we felt this was our strong suit. But for David, that was an easy exception to make. And it turned out to be a very complicated production, because this was at the very beginning of 3D technology, and we put David into a 3D scanner, one of the first ones around. You're talking, I'm not quite sure about the date, but my guess would be this must have been 97-ish, in that neighborhood. So this was one of the very, very first 3D scanners, and we wanted to build it in 3D. And it turned out that we couldn't really do this with the scanned image, because it just had too many points. This was all like very, very much in the beginning, and nobody really knew what worked and what didn't. And ultimately, we had a model maker, a fantastic Japanese model maker, made us 4 different David Byrne dolls, a happy, normal, a sad, and an angry one, and then just had the dolls photographed, and that worked out brilliantly.
Yeah, I love that package. The next one is Rolling Stones Bridges of Babylon, 1997. And how was it working with the Stones, by the way?
I would say difficult and easy. Easy because Mick Jagger was very much involved, and there was no management or record company meetings. It was all directly with Mr. Jagger. Difficult because he doesn't like to make decisions, and I've heard this from other people who worked with him too. So everything was basically moved until the absolute last possible moment, which became then quite stressful, because of course you still had to hit all the deadlines. So it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was an easy job, but it definitely, of course, made a big difference for the studio, because it, I think that we kind of, meaning there was definitely, I think that part of the reason why our studio, Sagmeister Inc., was quite well known within the design world, was also because we'd done a packaging for the Stones. So it was definitely good for us, and I'm pretty sure it was good for the Stones, because I've seen the sales numbers of some of the merchandise that had our imagery on it, and they were extremely significant.
Yeah, I love the case on it. You take it out.
Yeah, it was sort of
I like the front and back, the case that it's in also, what you did with that.
They used these kind of patterns then on the curtain for the live tour.
Yeah.
It was a talk of synergy. Yeah.
Next one, Aerosmith, 9 Lives, 1997. That's intricate. There's a lot of stuff on that one, right?
Oh my God, that was probably the worst job of my life ever.
Wow.
yeah, I've never suffered on any other job as much
Oh my
as
God.
this. It was just it was an unfortunate situation where Aerosmith had created a complete album which was rejected by their newly signed record company, and that kind of created all sort of difficulties. They fired their manager, the drummer left, and they had to go back into the studio to re-record the album, and we kind of wound up as a play ball between these powers, between the record company, new management, and the band. And it was a process of about 2 years, and it was absolutely terrible. Yeah, it was by far the worst job I've ever done in my life.
Wow. I'm going to get you into a good mood and get you to the next one. One of my favorites, Lou Reed, Set the Twilight Reeling, 1997, nominated.
Basically, it's a dark blue cover. It's a tinted jewel case, and it has a yellow image in there. And but that you only see the yellow once you take it out. So basically, it came out of a talk, out of a discussion between myself and Lou, who said that he's sort of, now that he's in love with Laurie Anderson, and much of the album was about that he was sort of ready to shed his dark prince persona into something much more positive. And that's really where that concept for that kind of packaging came about. And Lou was a pleasure. Like, he lived in the neighborhood. He was on 11th Street. I'm on 14. So it was very easy to go to his place, so he came over to the studio. And we really, like, from the first meeting, kind of just hit it off. Like,
wow.
I think, and he turned out to be unbelievably loyal. Like, he would, it was just a really lovely relationship. And for me, super surprising, because he had such a bad reputation in the press of being, awful to work with and angry. And I didn't see that side of him at all. Like, we really just got along super well.
We worked on New York album and Magic and Lost with Sylvia before you, and he loved everything we did. So he was very easygoing with us also. He liked our graphics, and of course he would love your graphics. I mean, you were out of the box. I would also bring up one of my favorite posters, Set the Twilight Reeling point of purchase poster, which was in our rock poster show. And that's a beautiful poster, and with the writing on it. I love that. I love that poster, Stefan.
Thank you. Yeah, it came out. It was originally just a page, one of the many pages in the booklet. You see, like, I basically came into album cover design when the CD was already established. Vinyl were still here and they're made mostly for Europe, but the prominent packaging system was the CD. So we, of course, like everybody else, sort of bemoaned the smaller format. The 12 inch is definitely a much nicer format, but we tried to very much take advantage of the possibilities of the much more expanded booklet, because on the vinyl you would never get, or only very wealthy, very famous bands would get, like, a double album or a fold out cover. Most bands would just get a front cover and a back cover, which is sort of like a small poster. While on the CD, yes, it had a crappy side. Yes, it had a kind of badly aging plastic jewel case. But what you could do was, it was not very difficult to design a 16 or sometimes even a 24-page booklet that wasn't that much more expensive for the record labels to produce. So it wasn't that difficult to talk them into it. And so you could tell a more intricate story within that packaging system.
You did a vinyl on that, right?
We did do a vinyl on it, but it was at that time, when we're talking like late 90s, it basically, the vinyl from the way the record labels treated vinyl at that time was basically like an afterthought. Like you did the main thing was the CD, and then suddenly you got a phone call and said, "Oh, you know what? We forgot the UK needs vinyl. Why don't we just blow up the front cover and the back cover?" It didn't really, in many cases, didn't really work well for us because the entire concept was designed to be on 18 panels, and the front and the back didn't really tell the entire story. So, now that basically things, with at least in the physical form, return to vinyl. Vinyl packaging, of course, now is much, much, much better than it used to be in the 90s because it's again designed specifically for it. But of course, you're designing for a tiny audience of specialists because the numbers are very small.
Yeah. Pat Metheny, Imaginary Day, 1997. That's interesting. What do the symbols on that mean?
Well, that was a fun job because when I talked to Pat about what we normally did with every band, like talk about where does the music come from, what are the influences, why did you write it, what images are in your mind from the songwriting, and it turned out that there were quite a lot of things to quote, and so we said, why don't we just replace the entire text with this sort of secretive symbolic language? And so all those symbols, they actually spell out Pat Metheny Imaginary Day in symbols. And then on the CD, when the CD was in the cardboard packaging, you could kind of decode it using the CD as a decoder. And of course, people decoded it. It was, decoded within hours after it was published and was put on the web. It was a fun thing, and Pat, not only was I and am I a fan, but also a lovely person to work with.
Skeleton Keys, the next one, Fantastic Spikes Through a Balloon, 1998. That was nominated for a Grammy.
That was also lovely to work with. Great band. One of those bands that, for reasons I did not understand, did not become as big as they should have been. I mean, just really excellent band, fantastic live, great in the studio, wonderful people, and they were on a major label, and I think it sold like 30 or 40,000 CDs, but at that point it was just not enough, So the major labels looked into the hundreds of thousands as something that they would see as a success. So, but really, like, I'm still friendly with the singer. Great guys, great band. Not as successful as their label had hoped.
Got these holes or something, the graded hole columns.
Yeah, basically it was a roll fold, meaning like it folded in on itself, and then we cut, I don't know, probably 150 holes through it. So also you could see the silver of the CD shining behind it. I think it was a successful package. Yeah.
Beautiful package. Now the next one won a Grammy and for packaging, and that is called Talking Heads Once in a Lifetime, the CD DVD box set in 2005. That had a beautiful package. I mean, there's so much stuff in it, and it's like a complex but simplicity package, as Judith describes it.
That actually came out almost out of a joke, because we had originally designed a completely different package. This is a box set.
Wow.
We had designed a package that was just a little bit bigger than a regular CD. And at that point, somebody in marketing changed and a new marketing person came in, and that new person thought that the box set had to fit within the normal bins of the CDs, which no box set did at the time. Like, box set lived on in every record store, they lived on their own shelves. So the request was kind of odd. But in order to follow that new rule, we designed something skinny enough that you could possibly put it into the regular white bin into a record store, but so long that it would stand out like 2 or 3 times as long. So this is where the format came from. And then inside, it was quite elaborate, as in, I think it was an 80-page booklet, and it had also had a DVD with all the best Talking Heads videos, and it of course had the whole thing was called Once in a Lifetime, so obviously it had 3 CDs with all the best songs, which they had many.
Steph, who was the illustrator on that? Was there an illustrator on it?
Actually, no, were not illustrators. These were 2 Russian artists who had just broken through, and they had shown at Deutsch projects, where we also later on had an exhibition. So I got in contact with them through Jeffrey Deutsch.
Next one is Jay-Z, Kingdom Come, 2006.
Well, this was at the very, very end. We actually, at that point, already didn't really design album covers anymore. And Jay-Z had seen our book where we had used a very similar optic illusionary trick that we had used for Zinker we talked about. And he basically wanted the same. And I wasn't really that interested or that hot of redoing that trick, that optical illusion. And he asked, so how many books did you print? And I said, well, I think we printed 50,000. And he said, well, look, our first print run is 5 million. So it's like me trying something out in the club, and then when it works, I go into the arena. That seemed to be a good argument. We did it for Jay.
That's a great story. Okay, so now we'll come into the final one. It's everything that happens will happen today, 2010. That was nominated and a winner of a Grammy, 2 categories, right?
Yeah, that was for David Byrne and Brian Eno. Yeah, and it's we had a special package made, quite complicated, in a tin box with a sound system in there, so you heard people. You had steps walking, and on that little tin box you had a house, and then inside the tin box was a plastic covered small booklet that was all about that house and strange sort of like walkways into the cellar. So there was definitely a dark side to the whole thing, even though it looked quite pretty and sort of like it looked like a regular suburban house. And I think it was a reflection of some of the lyrics that I had talked to David about, where the songs were actually quite jubilant as far as their melodies and their arrangements is concerned, but the lyrics hinted at something somewhat darker. So we tried to capture it.
And we also know that you're so amazing in book design. You have done so much book design that's so incredible. Probably show some of those books. Judith, come on in with a film. What about Happy Feeling?
Well, we at one time we made a documentary film, originally designed. The idea was to make it about happiness in general. It was a full feature length film, 92 minutes. And then it turned out that I wasn't really the expert to create a sense-making film about general happiness. So we reduced it down to my own happiness. So it became a quite personal film, with the advantage that I really was an expert on my own happiness. And it maybe joined the Aerosmith packaging as also a very, very difficult job, simply because, for very, very different reasons, because ultimately there was no client interference. The difficulty in the film was that I had underestimated how difficult it is to make a watchable documentary film. And so it took much longer than anticipated, cost much more money, and we spent many more hours on it than anticipated. I mean, the whole thing went over a stretch of 8 years with an extreme amount of up and downs. But ultimately, I mean, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I still get mails from it. People are still watching it. It's on Amazon. It was a big effort. That I can say. It was a big effort, and for a while, I very much toured with it. We had, it was in many film festivals. We opened at Tribeca here in New York, but also in certain countries it had cinematic releases. Strangely, in countries that are in trouble right now, we had cinematic releases in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, but that's the reason because I'm from there. But we also were in the Ukraine. It was very successful in the Ukraine and in Israel. So, yeah.
Did you use your own funds to make the film, or
the way we financed the film was that I did talks about the process of making the film when the film was not finished, and I got paid for these talks, and that money went into the film. And we had, well, I can tell you, we had an overall budget of $850,000, and the entire budget was created by me talking about the non-existing film.
Would you consider doing another documentary, or maybe even just a fictional film?
I would not. It's I think that it just turned out that it was so difficult to do, and the space is so crowded that, like I can tell you, as a pendant to the film, we also had an exhibition, and called, the film was called The Happy Film, and the exhibition was called The Happy Show. And the exhibition, I felt, created much more momentum and was much easier to do. So we had this exhibition, went to 10 museums around the world, had overall over 500,000 visitors, and created an incredible amount of press. While the film, I felt, well, it's difficult because Amazon doesn't really release numbers, so I never really knew how many people actually saw the film, because I don't know the numbers. But I just felt that from a pure impact point of view, the exhibitions were at least as successful as the film was, and we had a much easier time creating the exhibition than the film.
I want to thank you for this book that you gave me in 1998, which is hard to get. It's Japanese, beautiful.
I'd like to say something here about what you just spoke about design, and I think that, my thought on your design, I think you stand out, for me anyway. Personally, I think you're a genius graphic designer, and the reason I say genius is because I see your designs, and I don't know if anybody else has ever correlated the graphics that you create. To me, are like you're writing poetry with your graphics. It's almost poetic. I mean, literally, really. I'm not just. I mean, it's just, it grabs you and I feel that I was discussing this with Spencer, that a lot of your designs they look complicated, but yet they're simple, because I believe that it came from your heart, and you're not, it's not about it probably is making the big bucks, but your design to me is just so beautiful and simple and poetic. I just thank you for contributing that to the world, and I think that your design makes me happy viewing it. So thank you for that.
From me too, Steph, it's like you're a very special designer and you deserve the best in the world. And Judith and I love you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's a nice thing to say.
And I don't know if you want to talk about what you're doing in the present day. If there are any special projects that you're working on, or anything personal.
Yeah, no, totally. So, I mentioned this. It's basically the last 5 years we have not done anything commercial, and doing these. Every project that we do is about long-term thinking. Look, I can show, for example, see. So we just published a book that looks like this.
Yes.
It's called Now is Better. And ultimately what we're doing is we create these, we take 19th and 20th century paintings like this and cut them up and put new images in there. So these are, this is super high glossy. This is an 18th century painting. And the inserts are really data visualizations, and they show various things. Let's say this one, shows how public education spending has developed during from 1880 until 2000, where basically it was really small and is now very large. But almost everything goes in that direction, and we are having exhibitions pretty much all around the world. I go to Austria tomorrow. We have an exhibition very high on top of a mountain in a gigantic glass cube.
Wow.
And I'm going to Shanghai next the week after. There's a big exhibition there. So it's the idea really was to try to communicate that the way all media, both traditional media, print media, TV, but also social media, is looking at the world is also from the short, is always from the short term. And because bad things happen very quickly, all of those things happen to be negative. But if you look at the long term, where most good things develop, become good very slowly and don't work for the short term, the human development or the development of the world looks the exact opposite. And I think it's important for us to reflect on that, because if we want to change the many things that do need changing right now, it's helpful to know that in many fields, many important fields, we already achieved quite a lot. And that this entire negativity that we see constantly on traditional and social media is actually truly dangerous. I find there are serious consequences from all this negativity that is fed to us by traditional and social media. So I try to put on a tiny little counterpoint, because when I look at how successful changes have happened in the last decades, it was always through negativity and positivity. It's sort of like the whip and the carrot. And the media delivers plenty of the whip, so we try to add a little bite of carrot here and there. That's basically what
I think that's where we're going to go now. And now that I want to thank you very much, Stefan, for being on and giving us the beautiful rundown of everything that you have. And we respect your work. And again, you're one of our favorites in our life. What can I say? And you walked in my office when you first came to New York. I remember that. Yes. You walked in I wish we could have worked together. And I want to tell you, I've known you since. You've been a wonderful, humble guy with me. And you're just that type of person. And thank you very much.
I appreciate it so much. Have a great evening, everybody.
You too. Thank you.